represents that generation of people who use Facebook and Twitter. Unfortunately, Google Plus was not around. So maybe the movement would have succeeded.
Well, I was going to say, Maziar, that even with the changes, at least at that point, in 2009, it wasn't enough to prevent Ahmadinejad from being reelected. And Rouhani, the new president, he's supposed to be a reformer, etc. Just give me a few words about that. Has there been a change, especially in the parts of Iranian society that interest you, free press, bloggers?
Well, change in Iran is a very slow process, and it's a good thing that it's a slow process because people look at the neighborhood and they see the sudden changes in Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya and all the chaos and mayhem, and they don't like it. So they like slow, excruciatingly slow changes, but sustainable change. So Rouhani represents that kind of change, but again, it's a slow change. Rouhani is by no means Nelson Mandela or even Václav Havel. He is better than Ahmadinejad. So he's a step forward, but I mean, not that much maybe. And the fact that Rouhani was elected in 2009 was a sign of change because he was the least liked candidate of the Supreme Court.
Rouhani last year, I think it was.
Last year, yeah, 2013.
He was the least liked candidate, but he was able to win.
Yes, so, and that was the direct result of the demonstrations in 2009 because the regime as a whole realized that they really made a bad mistake in 2009 by rigging the votes and suppressing the movement, and it really backfired. So this time around, they allowed people some freedom, and people took advantage of it and voted.
But still, what happened to you could happen again? Even, let's say, to an Iranian-born Newsweek correspondent who comes to Iran to cover a story, it could happen again?
Well, with Newsweek, I don't know, because it was sold for $1 a few years ago. But
you got the joke about Newsweek's perhaps lack of influence, but still, for a foreign journal.
For a CBS reporter.
But especially an Iranian-born.
Of course, definitely, and I think something worse than that can happen, and something is happening to Washington Post reporter Jason Rezaian as we speak.
Is he Iranian-born?
I'm not sure, but his father is Iranian.
Yeah.
So I think he is.
So they treat him like a citizen that they can imprison and.
He definitely has an Iranian passport, definitely. So no, these things happen. And what I'm saying is that there is a reform, there is change. It doesn't mean that the regime has become a Scandinavian democracy overnight. It means that the change is happening in the society. The government, of course, it has knee-jerk reactions. It sometimes suppresses people. It allows people some freedom. Sometimes it ebbs and it flows. But I think in the long run, I'm quite hopeful and optimistic. But in the short run, I think there will be many dark periods. There are almost 60 journalists in prison in Iran, professional journalists and citizen journalists. And that's a revolving door because sometimes they allow some people out, they arrest more people.
Now, what you're learning about Maziar is that he's not a revolutionary. He favors gradual change, somewhat optimistic, not a radical, didn't go there in 2009 to be a campaigner, but to do the job, to help also Britain's Channel 4 News. That was the real reporter, Lindsay Hilson.
Yeah.
Okay, playing herself. So it gives, more of a sense of things being real. Now, in your book, Then They Came for Me, which is out again now, retitled Rosewater, by the way. They call that a movie tie-in. But it's the same book, and it's an excellent one. There are more details, but here's one that I don't think the movie got to at all. As part of your being freed, you agreed to pay bail, which suggests they thought you'd show up for a trial. What can you tell us about that?
Well, basically, that was the price I had to pay for my freedom. As you see in the film, I signed the paper that I'm going to spy for them, that I'm going to work for them. And also the night before my release, Rosewater and his boss, Hajaba, as you see in the film, they took me to a cafe and they threatened that if I talk about what happened in prison, they can always bring me back in a bag. And
let's just pause on that to realize, because that didn't make the movie, right? After you're out of the prison, before you get on the flight to London, the same two guys we saw who worked for the Revolutionary Guards, by the way,
yeah.
including the interrogator Rosewater, took you out and said, you know, if you ever speak out and tell this story, we can bring you home in a bag.
In a bag, and we've done that in the past. So, and yeah, it was a scary, actually, it was maybe the scariest time I've had in a cafe, because something else happened before that thread, that Rosewater asked for tea, and the guy said, the waiter said, I'm sorry, it may take about 10 minutes for tea to be prepared. We just started a new one. And he just looked at the waiter and he said, we want 3 teas now. And the guy, I'm not sure what happened. I think he went to one of the neighbors and ordered, but we had the tea, like we had 3 teas within like 1 minute.
Yeah.
So after that, he made a threat that, you know, the same way that I can get the tea within 1 minute, I can always bring it back.
Yeah, a chilling voice. But part of the official procedure also was to pay a bail, almost a ransom for yourself.
Basically,
You,
yeah.
somehow the family came up with, what, $300,000?
300, basically, we had to use our apartment as collateral.
Wow.
Yeah. And the apartment is still in the hands of...
So that's fairly common, and you may not know, dictatorial regimes often do that. They make it look like part of the legal process, but they're getting money out of you or your family, like ransom.
Exactly, yeah, they're just, that's one of the ways to make money for them.
Now, you cannot go back, is that clear?
I can go back, but I cannot come out.
You could go to Iran.
I have a 16-and-a-half-year sentence in absentia.
Oh, I see.
Plus 74 lashes.
So also after the movie, after the story here, they put you on trial and absent you.
In absentia, and within, I think, 3 or 4 months, I'm not sure when it was, but it was early 2010, I think March 2010.
And you were informed, you've been found guilty.
Yes.
And
I think originally it was 13-and-a-half years, but then they increased it every now and then. They gave me a sentence, so they just, you know.
was officially sentenced to more than 16 years in prison. He already paid that money. Oh,
plus
lashes.
74 lashes.
74.
Because someone tagged a picture of Ahmadinejad kissing a boy on my Facebook page. I didn't put it. Someone tagged it, and they said that through this picture you're implying that the president is a homosexual, and that's an insult. So 74 lashes for that.
Now, what else would people like to know? Oh, well, of course, the birth of your child shortly after you were out of prison, got home to London. So that means you now have a 5-year-old.
Yeah, she became 5 2 weeks ago.
Pretty good, 5-year-old daughter. So some sweetness from the story. Your work includes being a filmmaker.
Yes.
And let's see, I'm thinking of a documentary you made that's coming out pretty soon about the
Yeah.
Baha'i minority of Iran.
Yes.
What's that title?
That's called To Light a Candle, and it's about the Baha'is. I'm not sure how many people know about the Baha'is. They're a religious minority in Iran who are persecuted, and they cannot go to, I'm not a Baha'i myself, they cannot go to university and they cannot teach at universities, so they've started their own underground university.
Wow.
And we have a campaign now to raise awareness for them called Education is Not a Crime. The website is educationisnotacrime.me. You may have seen me in different interviews wearing a t-shirt with the hashtag Education is Not a Crime. That relates to
That's what it's about. That film's coming out in a few months. There's some screenings.
Yeah.
So watch for that. That's To Light a Candle.
To Light a Candle,
Right.
yeah. So on 22nd of February, we're going to show it in different.
And Maziar, I'm not sure folks know, I think you made a film also about Jewish refugees from Nazi Germany
Yes.
who were turned
That was
away
my
on that
first
ship,
film,
the St.
yeah.
Louis. That was a few years ago you made your first film.
No, that was about 19 years ago.
But you're not
As soon as I came out of.
but you're not a campaigner.
I'm not, no. No, I'm just interested in human rights and people's rights to be themselves, whether they're Jewish, Baha'is, homosexuals, or whatever people they want to be, unless they harm others. I think they should be free to exercise that.
Now, how about
I think that's the job of a journalist to just observe the truth and
spotlight it, illuminate it, of course.
Yeah.
So how about Jon Stewart? First, as a filmmaker, you know something about film making.
He's a nasty man.
He's a friend of yours now, we know that. But sir, how they made the film in Jordan almost entirely.
Yes.
And you were there all the time.
Yeah.
Was that in part to correct things? You know, if something
Yeah,
didn't look
well,
right?
But what happened was that when I came out of prison, I went on the Daily Show. I had this Newsweek article, and then John and I, we started to talk about making a film. In the beginning, he wanted to be the producer of the film, and we tried to contact different writers, different directors, but they were busy, not interested, or they were doing, I don't know, Fast and Furious 70, 80, which apparently is better than 77, but still not as good as
Fast and Furious.
And then, so after a year and a half, John said that, we have to make this film in our lifetime because it is not like, I don't know, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, that you can always shrink your kids. It was a timely story that had to be done, yes.
So he said, I'm going to write the screenplay and I'm going to direct it.
No. He said that let's work on the script together. So we worked on the script together, and after 2.5 years or 3 years of investing so much energy, time, and emotion in the project, he did not want to give it to a third person because we did not know what that person was going to do. So he directed it himself.
Meaning his first movie.
Yes.
So, John's not here, you don't have to give him any false applause, but I was certainly very well impressed with how it's put together. First film, first feature by a guy. So.
I mean, as he says it all the time, it's not very different from what he does on a nightly basis in the Daily Show, because he manages a big team of people, and he's also the executive producer of Colbert Report, and he has other projects. So he knows how to manage people. And also, in terms of deconstructing the story and creating narrative, it's very close to things that he does. But also...
Did he seek advice on that, though? On how to structure a feature film with its pacing? In other words, he meets a lot of movie directors.
Exactly,
did he get a little free advice from people?
He did, from J.J. Abrams, I think, and from Paul Anderson, from David Fincher, from the big names, Ron Howard.
Ron Howard, some advice.
So some advice, and they were not paying attention that you have to change the dialogue or something. They were just talking about the structure and viability of the project.
Great to have
and
friends.
Also, he surrounded himself by good people, the DOP, the director of photography, production designer, the producers. They were all very experienced, and he's very open to new ideas, and also the actors. The actors, they're all great actors. Gael King-Bodnia, who plays Rosewater, the other actors are amazing actors, and he was very open to suggestions and ideas.
And how about it looking like Iran? Were you a key person in keeping your eyes open in Jordan that no Arabic signs went by, that all the license plates were Iranian?
I think that was one of the things that I worked closely with the production designer, Jerry Sullivan, on before starting the production, that make sure that there are no, we could not replicate Iran because, especially because of the budget, and it's also impossible to do it. So we went through two different ways. One was to make sure that the locations looked as close to Iran as possible, and also there were no Arabic signs, as you said, or there were no Sunni mosques in the background. But at the same time, I still have many friends in Iran, and I asked them to send us some footage from Iran. So all the point of view shots and long shots that you see in the film are from Iran.
Again, this is fresh on your mind, so sometimes you saw what appeared to be streets of Tehran. It felt like it was being shot maybe from a motorcycle or a vehicle passing by. That's Tehran. And that's, if you will, smuggled footage in order to help this movie, which the Iranian regime would not like one bit, of course.
I don't think they like it.
And I want to be sure to get your view on this. You feel, don't you, that the film brought us a picture of young Iranians in Tehran who are not much different from us?
Exactly. I think for the first time in Hollywood films, in American films, there is a nuanced picture of Iran. This is not Without My Daughter, part 2. It's new image of Iran that we see. It's more nuanced image of Iran. The first half of the film, as we saw, it's all about young Iranians, people who are the best allies of the West, people who are enlightened, inclusive, more open-minded. They want to communicate with the rest of the world. They want to learn from the rest of the world. So this is the Iran that I hope to see more and more.
You hope that's the strongest part of the future, but for now, even this film shows that they are suppressed.
Yeah, there's a struggle. They will be suppressed for the foreseeable future. There will be constant struggle between this young generation of Iranians and the older generation who want to keep the status quo because they're basically benefiting from the status quo.
Now, before we turn for a couple of questions from you, let's talk about high politics. And if you want to hear me speaking with Maziar and with Jon Stewart, by the way, and you Google CBS Weekend Roundup, you'll find my 9-minute radio interview with the two of them, and we got into this that I'm about to raise here. There's a deadline in the nuclear talks. The U.S. and some allied countries negotiating with Iran. The deadline is a week from tomorrow. And there's sort of a hint there'll either be tighter sanctions or maybe even a war. Israel or the U.S. might bomb Iran. Where do you think that's going? And in any sense, do you think the regime deserves to be bombed, at least its nuclear facilities, that might do some good?
Yeah, well, I don't think that you can bomb a regime. You have to bomb a country, and it's very difficult to bomb just the Revolutionary Guards. I mean, there is no. The worst thing that can happen to the pace of reform, as we talked about earlier, there's a reform is happening in Iran. The pace of reform is very slow, but something is changing. There is reform happening in Iran. And the worst thing that can happen for reforms in Iran, it's if a foreign country, foreign government, Israel or the U.S. bomb Iran.
You're certain about that? A military strike from outside?
A military strike from outside
would ruin the opposition.
Would not ruin the opposition, but it will slow the change of the pace of reform because it's going to, first of all, create resentment among most of the Iranians who do not like the Iranian government against those foreign governments because people do not want to be bombed, first of all. People do not want other countries to interfere in their affairs. That's a universal truth. And also, the regime itself is very well prepared for any kind of military attack and also for sanctions. And many people within the regime are benefiting from sanctions. The only people who are going to suffer from military strikes or sanctions are the average Iranians, and most of them are these young Iranians.
Badr, do you think there will be a nuclear deal by a week from tomorrow?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there is a real will, whether in the United States or Iran, to reach a deal. And also there are many interest groups in both countries, lobbyists in this country and in the city actually. And there are many Revolutionary Guards and other hardliners in Iran who are benefiting from sanctions through smuggling and through buying goods that they can buy from the West and the U.S. through China and getting their own.
Have you got that sanctions don't even hurt the power center known as the Revolutionary Guards?
It's very strange that while the average Iranian is becoming poorer and poorer, Iran is the biggest market for Lamborghinis, Porsches, and Maseratis and Ferraris in the Middle East. So some people are making money from this.
Well, as long as you keep the questions short, I'll take a few from you all and I'll repeat them if not everyone hears them. That was a quick hand from a young lady over there with, I think, glasses. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So first of all, thank you for coming. And my question is, how do you think what's the best way to support these young groups? Because obviously the government has a vested interest in creating a more conservative group through the university system, but at the same time, universities are the best way for people to gain ideas and to gain empathy.
All right, I'll have to cut you short. We'll have to keep it short. What's the best way to support opposition and young people with a mention of role of universities might be hopeful?
Well, I think, it depends on who is trying to help. When we were in San Francisco and we went to Twitter and Apple, I begged them to work with the government or force the government to create more space for the Iranians to be able to express themselves and get the news and share the news. And that can be through unfiltered internet, satellite internet. And if you're an average American, I think the best thing that you can do is to get in touch with your representative and force them to think rationally about Iran, because unfortunately there are many really organized interest group, radicals mostly, who are paying a lot of money to this interest group. And it was such a shame that many Americans wasted the opportunity to vote last week, and but many people don't waste the opportunity to complain about things. So I think if you're complaining, you have to take actions as well, and that is something that Iranians unfortunately cannot do because their votes are rigged. So I think that's one of the ways to do it. But also there are other groups that you can help. We have an organization called Journalism is Not a Crime. The website is journalismisnotacrime.me, and we have a website called Iran Wire that helps journalists who cannot work in Iran and citizen journalists in Iran to find a forum, so you can be in touch through that. But also there are good American organizations